For years, Austen Kroll rarely won arguments by proving he was right. He survived them by making sure nobody stayed focused on what he had actually done. While other reality stars exploded in dramatic fashion, Kroll built something far more effective, a reputation for being harmless. That reputation became one of the most valuable assets of his entire television career. When viewers first met Austen Kroll on Southern Charm, he wasn't presented as a dominant personality. He wasn't the loudest cast member, the wealthiest socialite, or the most controversial figure in the room. Instead, he occupied a much safer position. He was the relatable guy, the easygoing friend, the person who seemed reasonable while bigger personalities around him attracted most of the criticism. That role gave him cover. As long as more explosive cast members were creating chaos, Kroll rarely became the primary focus. And when attention did eventually shift toward him, he often relied on a remarkably consistent set of conversational tactics that helped him escape the full weight of accountability. One of the most recognizable patterns appeared whenever he was confronted about his behavior. Rather than immediately addressing the accusation itself, Kroll frequently redirected the conversation toward the reaction of the person confronting him. A discussion about deception, betrayal, or dishonesty would suddenly become a discussion about hurt feelings, communication problems, or whether someone else was treating him unfairly. The original issue slowly faded into the background. The argument changed shape, and before long, everyone was debating something entirely different. Just as important as the words themselves was the performance surrounding them. When challenged directly, Kroll often appeared visibly overwhelmed. His expressions would shift, his posture would soften, his voice frequently became higher and less confident. Whether intentional or not, the effect was powerful. The image being projected wasn't one of a calculating adult defending questionable decisions. It was the image of someone struggling to process an unfair amount of pressure. That distinction matters because audiences and cast members often respond differently to someone perceived as confused than they do to someone perceived as manipulative. The result was a dynamic that repeatedly slowed confrontations down. Instead of aggressively pressing forward, people often found themselves explaining, clarifying, or softening their criticism. Over time, another pattern emerged. When friends or partners revealed vulnerabilities, Kroll occasionally reframed those moments through the lens of how they affected him personally. Critics argue that this tendency became especially noticeable during conflicts involving close relationships. One of the clearest examples came when a friend publicly discussed struggles with alcohol addiction. Rather than focusing exclusively on the difficulty of that experience, Kroll questioned whether the timing of the disclosure had altered the dynamics of their disagreement. To critics, the response felt deeply self-centered. To supporters, it reflected frustration and confusion. Either way, the moment highlighted a recurring theme throughout his reality television career: an apparent inability to fully remove himself from the center of a story, even when the story belonged to someone else. But the most emotionally complicated element of Austen Kroll's public persona involves a tragedy that predates reality television entirely. When he was a child, his family suffered an unimaginable loss when his younger sister died in a tragic accident. The impact of that experience has undoubtedly shaped much of his adult life. Psychologists have long documented how severe childhood loss can influence attachment, commitment, and emotional vulnerability later in life. Fear of loss, fear of permanence, and fear of making irreversible decisions are all responses that can emerge after profound trauma. Those realities deserve empathy. At the same time, some viewers have questioned how and when those discussions appear during difficult conversations. Critics argue that references to childhood trauma sometimes surface at moments when Kroll is facing intense scrutiny, creating a situation where emotional sympathy and accountability become intertwined. The result is a difficult dynamic for anyone confronting him. Continuing the criticism can suddenly feel insensitive. Pulling back can leave the original issue unresolved. Whether intentional or subconscious, the effect is often the same. The conversation changes direction. For years, these strategies worked remarkably well, but reality television itself has changed. Early seasons of many Bravo shows relied heavily on observation. Producers documented conflicts as they unfolded and allowed personalities to shape their own narratives. Modern reality television operates differently. Today's editing style is more aggressive, more analytical, and far more interested in exposing contradictions. As Kroll expanded into crossover appearances and larger Bravo projects, he lost some of the protective context that existed within his original series. Viewers weren't just seeing isolated moments anymore, they were seeing patterns. Conversations that once appeared unrelated suddenly formed larger narratives. Relationship conflicts became recurring themes. Behaviors that might have gone unnoticed across a single season became easier to identify across multiple shows. And that's the challenge every long-running reality star eventually faces. You can control a conversation, you can redirect an argument, you can even convince the people around you to see events from your perspective. But reality television has one final participant that always gets the last word: the edit. Over time, every carefully maintained persona is subjected to thousands of hours of footage, countless interactions, and years of accumulated history. The version of yourself you present eventually collides with the version captured on camera. For nearly a decade, Austen Kroll's greatest skill was navigating that collision. The question now is whether the audience has finally learned to see the pattern before the conversation changes again.